topic of the first session this morning, under the leadership of Lund University. The second dimension, which is probably the focus, of this session, is deals with research platforms and research infrastructures. Sometimes we call them excellence core facilities, because indeed this is one of the specificities of one of our alliance with respect to other European alliances. For now, there are 43 other European alliances, and by 2 years, the European Commission will have funded 60 European alliances that will represent around 500 or 600 universities throughout Europe, representing around 20% of the whole population of students in the 27 countries of the European Union. So this is a public policy tool, which is absolutely impressive, because you have a leverage effect with 20% of the population of the students, of the researchers, perhaps not exactly 20% of the researchers, but in terms of, you see the size of what we do. So the second dimension of the EUGLOHRIA project is led by Szeged University, and the third one is led by Porto University, where us today, and so it deals with the relationships with private stakeholders, innovation ecosystems, etc. Okay, so we have worked through that 3 dimensions, and as stated this morning by Professor Erbjørnsen from Lund University, one of the main outcomes, it was also the goal of the EUGLOHRIA project, is to progress in terms of practices, in terms of common knowledge, in terms of methodology. So we have worked very much on global health crisis, which is absolutely a very important topic, and most probably we will continue to work on that topic. Okay, but in the same time, we have carried out, we have settled, we have investigated a stable method, and we have proposed, established a common and stable methodology to carry out ambitious research activities on other topics, probably that issues related to climate change issues, etc., or any other topics of interest may benefit from the methodology that we have carried out throughout EUGLOHRIA. And within these 3 dimensions, of course, the access to excellence core facilities and research platforms is something which is very important. If we compare our profile, the profile of our European alliance with respect to other alliances, we can briefly remind that the different universities engaged in the alliance were more or less part of the alliance, because they to some extent it was decided at the level of the universities. They fulfill some conditions, and among the conditions they have faculty of medicines, because we are more or less connected to health, but we go much beyond health. Okay, but they have also rich ecosystems of private companies and innovation ecosystems around we have different clusters, okay, innovation clusters around the universities, and this is something that definitely not all the other European alliances. The purpose is not to compete with the other alliances, but just to state what are our specificities. In most of the other European alliances, the set of platforms and research infrastructures is less rich than what we have. We have a rich set of platforms and research infrastructures at the different universities, at the different universities. It's true more or less at all university sites. Okay, and this is something which is very important, because innovation comes from the interplay between education and research, the links with the private stakeholders, etc. But having research platforms is something which is beneficial for education, also for the links and the relationship that we may have with the private companies that may be interested in our infrastructures, that may feed our infrastructures, that may be part perhaps of the economic model that we may establish, because public-private partnerships, just like stated by this morning by Peter Hartmann from Lund University, are also something important. So definitely research infrastructures are very important. Okay, so just to tell you also this picture, I apologize because not all the people are present, but just to tell you that the project, of course, it has been enabled, of course, the progress and the outcomes of the project have been possible because people are engaged in the project. So there are many people behind the scene, at all the universities. And so if you are enrolled, and everyone is enrolled by one of the university, you may recognize some of the faces, some of the professors, some of the researchers, etc. Okay. Alors, regarding the research platforms in global health, we have many sets of platforms everywhere. And we have, as I will shortly introduce that, we have carried out a pretty extensive and very tight work in terms of methodology to rank, to classify the research platforms. Again, it has been enabled by many people involved, including at Paris-Saclay, Dr. Frédéric Dolé, who contributed a lot to our package 3, also with the colleagues of Szeged University, definitely. So this is one picture of a study tour carried out in Germany at the EMBL laboratory. So some achievements the colleagues of Szeged University can complement, and they will most probably at the discussion, during the discussion, complement. Some achievements definitely have been carried out, have been reached, and I will very shortly introduce them just to feed the discussion, because after we will have some PIs, some researchers who will present their works, and you will see why. So we have within WOR Package 3, the EUGLOHRIA project has established, has prepared a white book of a kind of inventory of the facilities. It was made at the level of the 5 universities, not at the level of the 9 universities, because it was done previously to the entry of the 4 members. And just to tell you that this work follows a strategic vision of what we want to do. What we want to do is to enable across access to research platforms. In the same time, this is the vision, easy landscape, a space for cooperation within the EUGLO Alliance. But in the same time, we know that each platform, there is a large diversity of research platforms, different cost models, different institutes, organizations in the different countries, even in the same university, there are different cost models, etc. So there is a strong complexity behind. So the strategic vision is pretty simple. The purpose is to enable a space for cooperation, relying on the research platforms. But as soon as we enter the details, we enter easily and immediately in a strong complexity. Just to tell you that a huge work has been carried out within the EUGLOHRIA project, and within the inventory, which is made of something like 780 pages of inventory of research platforms. Each platform was classified using different criteria that were discussed thoroughly between the 5 members, to classify what is relevant, what is not, etc. So a huge work has been carried out in brief. And also the techniques and the methodology highlighted already this morning by Lund University in WOR Package, so in connection to the research projects, was also applied to the research platforms. So clustering of the research platforms, which proximity do we have between the research platforms at the different universities? What are the main platforms present most of the time at the different universities? So this methodology can enable to see the complementarities, the redundancies, etc., between the different universities, etc. So the analysis can be pushed, and a thorough and a very strong work was made also. A memorandum of understanding was signed between the 5 members regarding the different points addressed there in terms of purpose, for sure, data management, financial aspects, legal aspects, etc. So we have reached the farthest point which was possible, because owing to the diversity of the research platforms, the cost models, etc. So this achievement is already great. We have been able to sign a MOU between the 5 universities. The handbook of operational regulations of the on the research platform was carried out also. A website was prepared as an entry point to know which platforms are available at the different universities. And in this exercise, a compromise was made between addressing all the platforms. This kind of inventory is a bit crazy because it is a time evolving inventory. Some platforms can close, some others can open, some are upgraded, etc. So this is something that should remain live, always relevant. So a very pragmatic approach was decided, and it was also successful. And the web page has been made available as an entry point. This is the website of the EUGLOHRIA project. If you click there, etc., you have access to the web page and a standard proposal scheme to have access to which platforms are available or not. So basically, we redirected also partly the information on the web pages, on the relevant web pages of the different universities, in the spirit of being complete as much as possible, as complete as possible, but at the same time, as pragmatic as possible. So again, strong work was achieved. And the last, perhaps, which would be the main achievements, perhaps the final achievements, I would say not the main, but the final achievements of package 3 and 2, so let's say of the research project and the research platforms, is to demonstrate that indeed research projects can be carried out, can be launched, can be facilitated by relying on EUGLOHRIA, on the EUGLOHRIA project. And when we had the midterm report review with the European Commission representatives, I can tell you that some of you were present, perhaps some colleagues present online. The representative and the external assessor of the European Commission was a bit cautious about our chance to fulfill that condition. So will you be able or not to launch research projects from the seed funds that you will propose to your research communities? They were a bit dubitative. It was okay. But in fact, we have succeeded in launching, proposing a seed fund mechanism to our researchers. And you see some examples of the research projects that have been launched with the seed fund proposed within EUGLOHRIA. So few kilo euros, between typically 5 and 15 kilo euros per research project. That's enough to encourage the research teams to connect, to at least 2 research teams to connect between each others and to launch a research project. And we hope so much that after they can develop much more ambitious research projects, exchange PhD or master level students, etc. So again, there are people behind. The EUGLOHRIA project is made by people. You may also recognize some of the people. So out of the 21 research projects, 14 research, out of the 15 research projects there, 14 research infrastructures are involved. And for some projects, there are 2 research infrastructures involved. This is the reason why we have 14 research infrastructures involved. Okay. So I would like again to thank you. And this set of slides is just here to give some overview, some general level information, because here indeed, for the rest of the session, we will have the chance to have some PIs that will describe what they have done, especially in regard with the support of the research infrastructures they have used. Alors, just to tell you also that 3 years is short, and we have launched the seed fund mechanism at the beginning of this year. And we all know that the dynamics to launch a cooperation in research scales at least in months and sometimes in years. So here we have only the first steps of the collaborations. So you will see some early stage research projects. And I'm sure that the PIs, the colleagues, will be very enthusiastic in presenting their early works. That these are only the first steps towards a much more ambitious projects. Okay. And one additional final comment. We are very eager. I think I can easily speak on behalf of the 5 members of EUGLOHRIA to have also the viewpoints, the feedbacks and the contributions of the 4 other universities, because definitely we have an alliance with 9 members. Okay. And we would like very much developing research activities at the scale of the 9 universities, perhaps not with the 9 members on each action that we may initiate, but definitely the alliance is made of 9 universities. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Eric. Now for our keynote session on perspectives from the European Commission on research infrastructure policy and planned R&D grants for the university alliances, we welcome Agnes Robin, Head of Research Infrastructure Sector of the European Commission. Agnes, are you online?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. I will share my screen very quickly. Is that okay? Can you see my presentation?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, thanks a lot. So good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to present at your event. First of all, I would like to have a bit of a lengthy presentation. I will try to be quick, nevertheless. Before starting my presentation, I wanted to really say congratulate the Alliance for the effort in sharing research infrastructure. And that's really, we really welcome this initiative. Indeed, sharing infrastructure, this requires significant efforts, starting from the inventory that you have made to description of access modalities and so on. But this has, in principle, many positive effects. First of all, you optimize the use of sometimes costly resources, so that's important. I believe also that sharing infrastructure triggers recognition within the university hosting the platform, including of resources needed, of the skill of the staff, and so on. So it's also an internal, let's say, communication tool that you have the expertise, you have the tools, and that can be shared within and outside the university. In addition, sharing infrastructure, it's a very good way to promote exchange of best practice. And this is both on the side of the users and the host of the platform. In addition, it increases the impact of the instrumentation that you have in your place. And then it's easier for your funding agency to get the justification for additional funding for maintenance and upgrade. It also increases the visibility of the university at overall and the department hosting the platform. In general, infrastructure, sharing infrastructure and access to infrastructure, this trigger also a lot of scientific cooperation. And in the recent council conclusion on research infrastructure last year, there was a highlight to the need to build a more connected, integrated ecosystem of research infrastructure among all different levels. So not only European, but also national and institutional, and to develop synergy. So your activities are really important in that context. And University Alliance in general are really a major part of the ecosystem for research infrastructure and the general research and innovation ecosystem as a whole, and therefore have a role to play. We know that sustainability is a challenge, sustainability for the Alliance, for the activity you share. It's not only funding, but maintaining and developing appropriate skills. So that's something we are aware. And my last comment before starting my presentation is really that it's important to make the link to other European infrastructure in the field. Other existing networks, of course, the S3s and the ERICs, and other distributed infrastructure, which typically have strong link with university. Maybe I will now start moving. Does it work? Okay, no. Can you see the presentation moving?
Yes.
Okay. So just to remind, we in general we have different definition of research infrastructure, be it in our work program under Horizon Europe, or in the ACE3 documentation, or in the ERIC regulation. But I think I don't need to spend too much time. That's that when we refer to infrastructure, it can be distributed or single site. It can be let's say digital infrastructure. It could be collection. It's not only one instrument or one big facility. It's quite diverse. Maybe very quickly, why an EU approach to infrastructures? And here you see some justification rationale for that. Pooling resources. So sometimes it's facilities are too complex, too costly, so to be done at by one entity or by one country. So it's very important. We need to open access to facility, and you are a good example of opening access to your platform. So addressing inequalities in access to top facilities. We need to coordinate and rationalize the development and use of infrastructures, and to address a quite fragmented landscape. So meaning we need to avoid duplication. We need to sometimes favor specialization, and also we need to connect national research communities. And last, and that I already mentioned, it's exchange of best practice, developing interoperability among facilities and resources. So that's a rationale for EU approach to infrastructures. And I think most of these points fit with what you are doing, that you could see some benefit in sharing infrastructure also at the level of universities involved in your alliance and sharing infrastructure on all these different points. So the landscape of infrastructure has significantly evolved in the last more than 2 decades. In the early 2000s, we had mainly national facilities or instrumentation in the different laboratories, the research organization and universities, and very few intergovernmental organizations such as the CERN and other ones. In a bit more than 20 years, the landscape has evolved. We have now, with the ACE3 roadmap, a number of pan-European research infrastructures. We have a number of active networks that have been supported in the past through our research infrastructure action in the successive framework programs, with in particular development of joint research activities to improve the services, networking among national facilities, and opening access. So we have a number of close to 90 communities who had supported access to external users. And of course, we still build on the national facilities and the labs hosting a research platform, and that can be very large national facilities, but also much smaller scale, and all have their importance in the ecosystem of research infrastructures. And usually, and for example, in a university are frequently involved as node in pan-European research infrastructure. So it's really trying to have a more coherent landscape of infrastructure. And here you can see a picture that comes from the last ACE3 roadmap in the domain of health and food, which I think it's more important for you. You know that we are research infrastructure activities are in the context of European research area, and recently there was a kind of renew of the era triggered by some rationale, which was delivering on the transition and recovery. So don't want to spend too much time. So we have this context of a new European research area, and with a significant objective related to investment, to benefit to the economy and the society, access to excellence, and of course free market, free movement of researchers and knowledge, which was already in the first, let's say, phase of the European research area. And what is important to notice is that research infrastructure are important for all these main objectives. It's not only mobility of researchers and knowledge, but all for all these objectives, infrastructure are essential. You recognize the 20 actions of the current era policy agenda. So we have 4 main priorities, which I've already mentioned. And you can see the action on research infrastructure, action 8, and also you are very familiar with action 13 on the higher education institution. What is really important is I think that this, let's say, allocation of action to specific objective, for me, it's does not reflect the reality. As I said, infrastructure and higher education institutions are also important for the other objectives, and access to excellence in particular, investment as well, concertation between member states and between different research organizations, universities to develop their to invest is also very important. So it should not be so specific to specific objectives. That's action 8. So I don't know if you are very familiar with this action. It has, let's say, 5 main activities and expected outcome. One is, and most of them are closely connected to the work of ESFRI. The first one is a landscape analysis by ESFRI. So in the past, it was part of the ESFRI roadmap. There was, since 2016, with each publication of the ESFRI roadmap with priority infrastructures, there was also a landscape analysis. Now there is a new approach. It's decoupled from the roadmaps. First, a strategic analysis, and only after the priorities, once the gap are identified and the priorities are identified, there is time to a new roadmap and to see if there is a need to new infrastructures. Another expected outcome with activities is around access. So that's very much relevant to you today. Broader and more sustainable access for all countries to European research infrastructure and their services. And also a revision is planned of the European Charter of Access to Infrastructures. Preparation of the next update of the roadmap and monitoring of the current S3 landmarks, so that these are the infrastructures that are in the roadmap since more than 10 years that are already implemented. So there is a kind of recurrent monitoring which is ongoing. One activity was also related to the ERIC framework. And in August, the Commission published the third report on the implementation of the ERIC regulation. And the last important point, it's a better cooperation, increased cooperation between infrastructures and digital infrastructure, and also with stakeholders, and when relevant through EOSC with regard to data and digital services. I mentioned ESFRI. I just want to maybe I will accelerate. So you have the rationale why ESFRI was created and the successive mandate passed by the Council to ESFRI. And I will just mention the last Council conclusion. Confirms the role of ESFRI in supporting a coherent and strategic approach to policymaking on research infrastructures. So it's not only about the roadmap, but also on the landscape, on the monitoring, and more generally on the contribution to the European research area. So now ESFRI is considering the whole landscape of research infrastructure, not only, let's say, the one on the ESFRI roadmap. So that's an important message to pass, that it's a whole ecosystem of research infrastructure, including all facilities hosted by universities. You are aware of the successive roadmap. Maybe I will accelerate. This represents a significant agenda for investment. And you can see along the successive roadmaps, the number of infrastructures that appear on the roadmap and the level of investments that this represents. Just a quick highlight on the work of ESFRI in these 2 years. and you have a long list. And what is in blue is what is directly part of the Action 8 of the ERA policy agenda, but you have also additional activities of S3 that are in the other colors. I think that this slide will be made available to you. So there are a number of direct links to reports or to pages of S3 that you can see here. Also, as an update on what is going on policy for research infrastructure, last week of September, there were a number of events hosted by the Spanish presidency. There was a presidency event on the global dimension of sustainability of research infrastructure. And here again, you will see some links with the declaration. So here are just some takeaway message. There was also a S3 stakeholder forum. So maybe some of you participated to this meeting. Some takeaway message is that global dimensions, there are many different perspectives. So there are technicalities related to global dimension. It's very much connected to open science and interoperability. It's also a different perspective. The global dimension can be on the impact of a research infrastructure in the global scene. For example, if you have your facilities contributing to Earth observation, so that's really one aspect of global dimension infrastructure. International networking or global scientific program. We have many ERICs currently having activities to liaise with their counterpart in other regions of the world, and also developing activities, exchange of best practice, and facilitating sharing facilities as well. So that's also one dimension which where you could exchange your experience with these ERICs as well. There was some reference to integrity and security, and some other aspect I won't detail. So it's just a snapshot of what is being discussed recently. And on access, there was a session in the S3 Stakeholder Forum, and what is important, what we capture from this discussion is that the needs from the users is changing, and also the profile of the users themselves are changing. Most of the facility, we have made a number of surveys, intend to extend their services and access to new users, including users from industry. So this has an impact. Also the type of access, more and more remote access, digital services. It has an impact on how you operate and which resources are needed by infrastructure to address these new needs. In particular, the need for new skills, need to train the staff at the facility, but also dedicated training to the users, because when you have new users, if it's not your core users that are very specialist of your facility, this requires significant effort. You need to adapt your offer. And also there was a discussion on what should be changed in the European Charter of Access to Infrastructures, and discussion also on how the EU is supporting access in our program. And one key message was that currently there are many projects, quite fragmented, and the project approach is raising some sustainability issue. So how to design, how to prepare the ground for a more long-term program, that was part of the discussion. So you have also some links here where if you want to see some part of the conference and the stakeholder forum, so you have links on this slide. Maybe I don't want to enter too much, but just to reinforce the fact that the type of access is very diverse. In general, physical access remains the predominant type of access, but there are more and more trend toward more digital, more remote access, as I mentioned. Also, the type of what is the core offer of the facility is highly dependent on the field. But what is common to all fields is that more and more part of the access, actually the training to the users, is considered as the part of the access itself. Also better access to the data. So even when the physical access is predominant, the data, making data available is really something which is important. It's not new, but this trend is really increasing and stronger. When we ask the facility, what are your plans for the next 5 years? What will you develop more? Access to data, access to development, and access to software was what was mentioned the more frequently. We asked in facilities whether they were offering services beyond research and education, and in general it was quite limited, but in the field of energy and environment, where there was some services, for example, to public, to civil authorities or to public authorities. Here again is some idea we capture on how access is provided, what are the type of user, what are the trends, and that I've already mentioned. But just I think it's important, if we want to know how to support access, how to design or support, we need to understand what are the type of access, what is needed, and what are the trends in the future. Also, there was some discussion on the barriers to effective and broad access. What are the challenges? And a number of respondents highlighted legal aspects. When you share your facility, you have to be clear on the intellectual property, on data protection, and on the liability of the infrastructures themselves. For distributed infrastructure, a number of challenge is related to the institution itself, the recognition of distributed infrastructure in the national system, in the national funding schemes, in the education and the research schemes. So that's even more complex for distributed facilities. Still, financial challenge is very important. I've already mentioned for EU funding. Also technical aspects, and from what's more the point of view of stakeholders that were consulted, issue with awareness. And I think it's also part of it's a topic which is relevant to you, how to raise awareness on which facility are available, what are the services offered, what are the conditions of access, how it fits with the scientific and research innovation agenda of the different communities. And that's it. And we're also discussing main orientation for the revision of the charter. I think I have to go quicker. You know that there are dedicated action under Horizon Europe for research infrastructure. We are in the first pillar, excellent science. And we have 5 main lines of action. The first one is really on the landscape, and it's very much related to the development of the S3 infrastructures, but not only, it's also international cooperation and training, upskilling. One is dedicated into the development of EOSC and the connection of the facilities, the infrastructure to EOSC. The third one is where we have supporting transnational access and virtual access. There is a challenge-driven part, supporting health research, green and digital transformation, and also a more curiosity-driven bottom-up approach with supporting advanced frontier knowledge. There is one line of action which is on the development, improvement of the scientific instrumentation, the tools and the method, and advancing digital solution. And the last one is on network connectivity in general, which is managed by our colleague from DG Connect. And you have an idea of the share between the different priorities, destination, as we call them, in the current work program. Because we are discussing access, here you see the list of projects offering access following the call in 2021. We have a new list of projects in the pipe following the 2023 calls. These are still under ground preparation, and there is not much on the health domain and the life science in general, a bit, but not. It's really here you can see several projects that are relevant in the field of life science in general and health in particular. So now, of course, we are discussing the next work program. We have just started the discussion on the main orientation with our program committee, and we are trying to integrate all the input we got recently, and which are just reminded here, and I've already mentioned now. I'm not specialist for Action 13, but I would just want to remind what is in this action, and I think you are possibly even more familiar than me. So that's Action 13, empower higher education institutions to develop in line with the ERA and in synergy with the European education area. So there is this European dimension. And also pursuing excellence together, that's really important. There is some EU support to institutional change by universities, and you are very good example of this aspect. There are, I think, around 40 alliances and other alliance of universities that are in the making, and 12 excellence initiative projects. There have been recently an assessment of the support, and there was some, let's say, recommendation based on that. What I understand is that there was a suggestion to have a more open approach to support universities and the alliances. So there is a move from grant to identify beneficiaries to competitive calls. And so that's why I think there is a call which is called European Excellence Initiative, EEI, where there's a target strategic institutional cooperation. So that includes the Alliance of European Universities, but it's not limited to them. And currently there are 12 grants under preparation. And out of the 12 grants, 10 are related to existing European Universities Alliance. So what was noticed is that in general, in this assessment, the analysis showed that the alliance made a lot of progress, and most of the benefit goes to institutions in widening countries. But there is one exception, which is sharing capacity, infrastructure, and resources, where we see that most benefit goes to the non-widening countries. So I think that's something that the discussion now were to address this aspect. So what's next? For 2025, I think what is being discussed by my colleague dealing with Action 13 and to the widening program is to renew the European Excellence Initiative. So again, competitive calls and with some adaptation. I understand that the idea is to relax some of the widening condition, which was perceived sometime by being too strong. I think it's all. Maybe I could mention that there are, in addition to this European Excellence Initiative, there are 3 acceleration service projects that have started in 2023. So they have more or less the same objective, but they operate in a different way. The aim is to accelerate service projects with a wider scope. So they are not funding strategic institutional cooperation directly, and they are not focused mainly on widening partners, but they indirectly support broad user group of universities to develop in line with the era and through consultancy work. So I understand that one project is focusing mainly on services to universities regarding strengthening careers. Another one is on knowledge valorization. And the last one, the third one, includes specific support for the digital transition. And I think with this, I'm ending my presentation. I can't remember where to stop. Okay. So if you have questions, I hope I was not too long.
Yes, Agnes, thank you very much for your presentation. Do you have time for one question? If you have any questions in the audience? Yes, just a moment. Eric Cassin from UPress.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ms. Robin, for your presentation. I have a question regarding the European alliances, because here, indeed, we are the European alliance. Does the European Commission see a specific role to the alliance in terms of research, infrastructures sharing, etc.? Because our alliances are strongly do a very strong bridge between research, education, and so research infrastructures and education. So we have a strong potential to boost the cooperation between research, infrastructures, and education. And excellence of research is not only doesn't rely only on research infrastructures, but to some extent it can, and in many topics it does. So thank you for your feedback on this question. Thanks a lot.
We clearly see a role of the universities in general and of the alliance in particular. What we encourage typically is that I've mentioned the S3 and the S3 Stakeholder Forum. What we encourage is that you register as stakeholders in the S3 Stakeholder Forum. You have the link into one of the slides, and like that, we would consider you as an umbrella organization, so a voice in the discussion. So you would be invited to participate when there are surveys addressed to stakeholders. So you would receive this request for surveys. For example, for access, there was a number of surveys that was introduced. There was very specific survey, very detailed and lengthy survey addressed to research infrastructures. But there were also some more generic survey addressed to stakeholders. And we address this survey to the stakeholder registered in the ERA forum. So not only S3, but in the ERA forum in general, and also to the specific stakeholders who register to the S3 stakeholder forum. So it's a way to make the link between your activities, if you are involved in sharing infrastructure, and to pass your ideas and suggestions and being consulted in the discussion related to more the European policy on research infrastructures. And in addition, we invite always, if you are in particular in one specific field, to always pay attention to the development in your domain in S3. So you have the last roadmap. Soon there will be published mid next year a landscape analysis. There will be a part per domain. So it's important that you see how the landscape of research infrastructure is perceived, and if there are aspects that are missing, that you bring some feedback to S3 that some aspects are missing. So it's important that this exchange between the Alliance and the work done by S3 and by the Commission on research infrastructures.
Thank you very much, Agnes. Thank you, and thank you again for coming, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Have a good continuation. Bye-bye.
Now for the next part of our session today, we welcome Professor Gabriel David to moderate the roundtable session on the future development of sharing research infrastructures in global health. Also, Zoltan Konya, the Vice Rector from the University of Szeged, Sonia Pereira, Head of Research and Projects Office at the University of Porto, and online, Professor Paul Vegard from the Arctic University of Norway. Thank you very much.
distinguished participants in this roundtable for agreeing to come and share their views on the sustainability of research infrastructures, starting from the reality of their universities. The policy with respect to research infrastructures is very much influenced by the ESFRI, European Strategy on Research Infrastructure, as we just saw in the previous and interesting presentation. ESFRI seeks to develop the scientific integration of Europe and to strengthen its international outreach. In the last years, we have seen in successive calls a trend for open calls toward thematic calls, enforcing the impact and the collaboration with industry. This shift from more basic research towards collaboration with industry seems a bit contradictory with the initial purpose of advancing the state of the art in science and also in basic research. However, more recently, there was again a drift and the distinction between research infrastructures and technological infrastructure. This new trends start to emerge, and the technological infrastructures are more devoted to work with the industry in short-term impact projects, leaving the basic research infrastructures more free for long-term strategies. The stated goal of this roundtable is to have a discussion on funding and sustainability of the Alliance Excellence Core Facility Network. I propose that we organize the discussion in 2 rounds of the 4 participants. The first round is a reflection on the existing infrastructures and their performance from the viewpoint of sustainability in a broad sense. I'm thinking about sustainability in 3 interdependent dimensions, but with different time scales. The first dimension is sustainability from the viewpoint of financial equilibrium. This is a kind of short-term sustainability. But for research infrastructures, the ability to leverage research and innovation among the researchers at the university and across the ecosystem, the ability to get effectiveness on engaging researchers and students in infrastructure activity is determinant for its medium-term sustainability. And the third dimension is the ability to anticipate the evolution of the field and absorb the creation of new knowledge, new technology, reinventing itself. For this, we need long-term sustainability. The interplay of these 3 dimensions is not always easy, and it's where effective management can be tested and successful. So, for the first round, and assessing your university's current infrastructures, which are the characteristics of those infrastructures you consider to be more sustainable. For example, from the following perspectives that you may want to consider in your presentation. Organizational perspective, are more successive the autonomous infrastructures or those infrastructures that are organizational units in the university, or those that are integrated in a larger research unit. So one aspect that may affect the sustainability of the research infrastructures you currently have maybe from this organizational perspective. A second one, it's the mode of operation, of course. Are more sustainable those research units that carry out their own projects, or those that are mainly providing service for third-party projects. Sorry. A third perspective is the access. research infrastructures that are mainly devoted for internal access, or those that are open to external researchers and teams, which are more sustainable. The dimension of education, though not primary, maybe those infrastructures which are actively involved in teaching and preparing new generations of researchers are more or less sustainable than those that are just hosting PhD students. And finally, from the suggestions I'm raising, of course, the networking are those infrastructures that are local, that are more sustainable, or those that are part of national or international roadmaps. And leaving these questions just as starting points, I would like to start by introducing Zoltan Konja, professor at the University of Szeged since 2011. His research field is materials chemistry and environmental science, and is co-author of more than 400 highly cited research papers. He's the head of the Department of Applied and Environmental Chemistry and Environmental Science Doctoral School, and since 2018 he is also Vice Rector for Scientific Affairs and Innovation at the University of Szeged. So please, I pass you the word for an intervention of maybe 10 minutes, okay?
10 minutes?
Yeah. For the first one, the second one, another 10.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, I mean, I tried to just put the questions just one by one, but I couldn't follow you. So I'm trying to just remember what were the questions. Let's start from the back. Let's say. If you ask me as a vice rector, my answer will be different. If you ask me as a professor, my answer will be different. If you ask me as a researcher, again, I mean, it's not an easy question. First of all, the education and the research in a university, it's one end, and you cannot separate it. So I mean that any kind of activity, including infrastructures, cannot be sustainable without using them somehow in education. I cannot really imagine, as a chemist or professor, I cannot really imagine an infrastructure what is not used by either students or not used in education. The results what we get, I mean, that it's always coming together. And if you put it as a base, then definitely, yeah, because if you have a new result coming from either basic science or applied science or industrial science, the next day, if you go to the room and then you have a meeting with the students, immediately you will just tell them, because this is normal for a professor, I think. At least for me, myself, it's normal. So how to define the sustainability of a research infrastructure? It's for me, it's a question, actually. It depends on so many different points. Like for example, the field, what you are talking about. Like if you have a infrastructure of material science or medical science, the sustainability is different. For me, in the VP3 of the EUGLOHRIA, we just collected more than 700 ECFs from the 5 partners, and actually, more than 700 ECFs were at least 200-300 different types, or perhaps more. So it was definitely not easy to even to classify these ECFs, and then the sustainability, defining the sustainability of all these ECFs were also would be a very difficult task, actually. And but I'm pretty sure that the education, the science, the private sector, the industry, all these things are going in hand in hand, because otherwise the whole thing, actually as a material scientist, for me this was always the point. I mean that everything was done parallel, all these things. And what is you had a question that what kind of infrastructure is sustainable, which is in a let's say in a department or in a university or in a larger like an institute, for example. This is also not an easy question. I mean that I'm working a lot with electron microscopes, so I mean that I would be happy if a university would just build a electron microscopic room or center or whatever, and I just would just pay for usage of the electron microscopes. Right now we are working on this to make it in our university, but actually the first step was to buy some electron microscopes and use them and keep them working. And actually the first step was in small groups. And then the next steps, I mean, that these things should move in towards the university support. This is my idea, actually, how it should work. I don't know if you have this kind of, if I answered your question. I mean that this is not easy at all, your question. This is very complicated question, and I think we have to just see one by one the infrastructures, how can we define the sustainability, even the from whatever part.
Okay, thank you. The same set of questions now for the second contribution from Axel Himhoff. I believe he's online. He's a professor at the Faculty of Medicine, Ludwig Maximilians Universität München, since 2005, where he teaches protein analytics. Previously, he has been at the University of Regensburg, the National Institute of Health, and the Molecular Biology section of the Adolf Butenandt Institute. He had significant editorial activity and experience coordinating core facilities. He has also participated in several European projects and scientific networks. Please give us your view on these questions of the characteristics of the more sustainable research infrastructures in your university. Thank you.
So if I may, just to say that Mr. Axel is not with us today for a last minute compromise. So we need to skip. Thank you again, even so, for the introduction. We are aware of the person at LMU, but we are changing for the next.
Okay. I was trying to check on the screen, but it was not easy. So we move immediately to the Paul Weger Storhayer, who got his PhD from the University of Tromsø and is currently concentrated on research management as strategy head of research administration and quality education section at the Arctic University of Norway. Very different conditions from those in Szeged or the University of Porto, so your experience will be very useful for us, and also because you are a new member of the Alliance, and so your perspective is surely different. Thank you for participating.
Thank you very much, and I'm really sorry that I couldn't be with you physically. I was in Lisbon 2 weeks ago, and I thought it was a bit far-stretched to go back again 2 weeks later, so I'm sorry for that, but I'll take part now. So I think that infrastructure is a very important way of structuring research and research collaboration, and we see that all our research infrastructure is important in that regard. And we're working now on how to systematically create more sustainable platforms for our research infrastructures. So as of now, we have no overall platform where we can see what kind of infrastructures all our department has. And this is important to get into place, because faculty departments are investing in infrastructure and doing stuff without actually knowing what kind of infrastructure other departments has. And this also, of course, if you could have more accessibility for other departments, but also then in this international context to increase the collaboration with other institutions would be really good. And this is something that we work on. We are now currently making a framework for research infrastructure in which this is the main cause then, and how to fund, and also the sustainability in all ways then. And as the previous speaker, I think it's really big questions that you address. I would have to answer differently for each infrastructure, because I think the funding is important for sustainability. If you think about the situation for the data, new data, for instance, in longitudinal surveys, how to get participants involved over time, how to have the collaborators on board, and so on. And also the accessibility of the data is different for each infrastructure that we have. And we're working on how to make it more open, all of this then. And open science is one of our main strategies at the university. And I think it's one of the things that I was really impressed with when I looked into the web pages of all the 5 original members of the network, was that you had been able to create this searchable place where you can see all the infrastructure. And I'm really curious about how far you really have come in terms of cataloging everything and also making it actually accessible. And I think the new members needs to do the same, and with guidance from the rest of you that has some experience on how to do this. So I actually have more questions than answers in this regard, but I think it's important that the new members also are included in the Excellence Core Facility Network, and we should discuss how this could be done and how we can use the expertise that you've built in the network already. So that would be my opening points.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll have an immediate answer to your questions.
It's not an answer. It's just I would, first of all, I would never say that, but someone would probably say that I am very happy that you have the same problem that we have in Hungary. You know,
it's not political correct.
Yeah, definitely. I would never say this. This is what I said. With Professor Csóka, who is here in the audience, we are working in the last couple of years at the University of Szeged on the same things. I mean, we have to make the catalogs what kind of instruments we have at the University of Szeged, and actually tell our colleagues that what we have, because they don't know what is in the next room. We have 12 faculties, and you know, when someone wants to buy the 5th microscope, or I don't know, CT or whatever, and just tell him that, you know, there are 4 already, and you know, 2 of them is not working because they don't need to switch it on because the other 2 is there. But they have money, so they are just buying it. And the first thing is you have to make the catalog what you have at a university. For us, it's not easy at all. I don't know how easy it is in Porto or Norway or something. We are working a lot on this. Actually, we had this morning, we had this kind of discussion with our university, because every time when somebody wants to buy something, we have to check that we have 22 from this instrument. So I mean, don't buy a 26, just ask the neighbor, when can you use it? We have results here, at least at the University of Szeged, about this. So we have some kind of catalog. You can see some part in this 700, I don't know how many ECFs in the white book. But we have to work still a lot, because we have to kind of press our colleagues to think about sustainability. I mean, I don't need a new one. Try to use this one, or buy something which makes the old one a bit better than if you buy just a new one, which is probably not as good as the old one with an extra. I mean, there are several things what we are working on, and definitely it's I was very happy to see what happens in Paris-Saclay or what happens in LMU, because definitely they are far away from our university. So we learned a lot in the last couple of years. No, thank you.
Okay. we'll have the last presentation in this first round, done by Sonia Pereira, physically in the room. After working as a project manager at an innovation consultancy company, she joined the University of Porto in 2007 as a research and development funding manager at the Knowledge Transfer Office, also known as o Porto Inovação. Later, she was in charge of the International Projects Unit, and currently she's director of the Research and Projects Office of the Vice Rectorate on Research and Innovation. From your previous viewpoint in the rather complex organization of the University of Porto, which are the most sustainable infrastructures and why?
Well, I suppose you hear me. Thank you very much for being here today. It is a pleasure. I've been following up on this EUGLO Alliance projects from its inception, from the beginning. And I'm very happy here today to talk about research infrastructures. So Professor Gabriel has said we have a complex ecosystem, our own research and innovation ecosystem, quite fragmented, with a lot of people, different areas, different interests, different research fields, and different infrastructures. So we have contributed, of course, for the mapping and the dissemination of the infrastructures for this EUGLOHRIA inventory. And it is quite interesting to see that actually we have a lot of infrastructures that somehow us, centrally at the research office, I would say it like this, we actually don't have that idea. So if we are a research office, and of course we are not doing research ourselves, right? We are supporting our research community and helping to develop the research strategy, agenda, and implementation. If we don't have a full idea of the research infrastructures, I would say, and I will share what the colleague from Szeged said, well, we have people that don't know that they have available some kind of equipment or infrastructure or database or whatever it is as an infrastructure. So this organizational structure, the way institutions are organized, the way we are organized, sometimes triggers a fragmentation that is completely reflected in the lack of knowledge and in such a way that it is hard also to have a concrete plan or a vision or the most out of the infrastructures development and functioning. So this was kind of an introduction. We have quite a complex ecosystem, yet we do have bottom-up infrastructures. We do have, that said, in the sense that research teams develop because of their research activities arising from projects, funded projects, arising from funding that comes from the National Foundation. We also have that kind of support from the National Foundation. So the roadmap that also makes a link to the ESFRI, the European Roadmap for Infrastructure. So we have all that. We have all those ingredients. We have people, we have infrastructures, different types of infrastructures, and I tend to agree that probably looking to case by case to understand what is the best road for sustainability. But I'm pretty sure that governance, people, rules, standardization to a certain point in terms of access rules, what kind of guidelines should be used for these infrastructures, and having a kind of a catalog of those institutionally is quite important. So that's what we've been trying to do in general also from University of Porto. Actually, throughout this exercise within EUGLOHRIA, we became aware of many research infrastructures from different types, which has been quite interesting, and for sure we will develop that. That strategy. As for the questions itself, and the first question or the first slot of questions about the existing infrastructures, financial equilibrium, Actually, I would like to say that for me, it was very interesting to hear Eric Cassin presenting the project, what we have done, what we have achieved as Alliance. I personally think that each one of us, original partners and new partners, have the first role in it, right? To determine internally and institutionally what is the strategy, but then again to bring it to this alliance as a whole. As for the financial equilibrium, as the other points that I have here to talk about today, I have one word in my mind, which is multi-level. Multi-level. I've heard all the previous colleagues speaking, and I don't think there is the only one, the best one, the unique recipe for how we make it sustainable. I think it depends on each of the infrastructures. I think it depends on the institution, on the teams operating the infrastructure in the first hand, how it relates internally. And for us, it is very clear at the University of Porto that we have a huge potential for our own research infrastructures to develop within our ecosystem, internal ecosystem. But of course, we are also in a good position to open up to the local, regional, national, European, and even international level of research infrastructure. So the first step for me is to understand who we are. I would say it like this, and a colleague from ZEGED was saying precisely this. So cataloging, identifying, to show internally first who we are, which equipment, which devices, which databases, which infrastructures we have, so that we can first leverage ourselves internally and then move along to other levels of collaboration outside the institution with the other local institutions, either private or public, and even international level. So the financial equilibrium is important, of course. What we know from our perspective and our experience is that this bottom-up perspective and approach from our research teams, this supports mostly the activity of the research infrastructures. A large part of the funding also derives from funded projects, okay, either national or European or international. And also, in my perspective, at my knowledge, a lower weight coming from contract research or services to the industry or companies. So we have heard here a lot of sources, let's say it like this, of potential funding sources for these infrastructures. So for me, it comes along with the research teams at the research units, but then summing up other types of funding sources, like projects or the national agencies funding specifically these infrastructures. So the financial equilibrium for me is a little bit difficult to understand what's the recipe, but I think that it would be a very good exercise probably at the end of the full mapping of research infrastructures at the University of Porto, of course, beyond those that are part of the EUGLOHRIA project. So it would be quite interesting to understand the sources and the financial contributions currently for these research infrastructures, for us to have a better idea of how would we have a better financial equilibrium. When it comes to leveraging research and innovation among the researchers at the university and across the ecosystem, yes, I think that's quite clear that, as I said before already, for me, it makes sense that research teams or researchers individually use and animate these research infrastructures. But of course, if we have our own ecosystem, and in the case of Porto, we have 14 faculties, 48 research units evaluated and recognized by the national agency, and 11 research institutes associated to us. This is one of them. I truly believe that each of the research infrastructures that we have mapped, that they are running, they can be of purpose and of utility to other teams internally at the University of Porto in our ecosystem. And of course, as from that, go beyond the geographical levels, let's say it like this, regional, international, and that would be, of course, for the best use of different research teams. As for the evolution of the field and the absorption of creation of new knowledge and technology, yes, I do think that in line with what we know about research infrastructures, there is this capacity to develop knowledge, increase incremental development, but also a little bit more of disruptive knowledge creation. So either with internal actors or external actors like companies or industry, I think these research infrastructures are quite a good place for bringing together different teams, different disciplines, and to go ahead with the knowledge and create new knowledge and new technology. And this has to do a little bit of what Agnes Robbins said about excellence-driven or market-driven research. And I truly believe that these research infrastructures really can operate in these two levels. So a little bit more internal and a little bit more of basic research development, but also market-driven and applied research. So I think this is in a good position. As for the last question that turns into 4 or 5, which has to do about the characteristics that we consider most sustainable, I would say, Professor Gabriel, that in all of them I would substitute the or by the and. So as for organizational perspective, if we should go sustainable by being autonomous or by organization through an organizational unit at university or integrated in the research area, I think that there can be room for different types of participation or organizations of this research infrastructure. So I would substitute the or by the and. I think we can be autonomous, but even so, within an organizational unit or within the university and within a research unit. So I think it can be a sum up. So that's my perspective of multi-level. I think we can work by levels and developing our path by bringing things together, not necessarily positioning in one way. So that would be my contribution for now. That has to do about the characteristics of organizational perspective, mode of operation, access, education, networking. I believe these are all dimensions critical for the functioning of any research infrastructure. And the way they develop, it's pretty much aligned, I would say, in a central thing, which is governance and vision for the research infrastructures. And I think that would be at the core of any plan for each institutional research infrastructure agenda. That would be a kind of a governance. What kind of ecosystem do we have? How can we link together the ecosystem within our doors and amongst the EUGLO Alliance, but also beyond that? So thank you.
Thank you for your detailed answer. I have several questions related to it, but I'll refrain and move towards the second moment of this roundtable, taking an approach more looking into the future to get your recommendations on sustainable development of the infrastructure that we have, asking you which funding portfolio is best, privilege-based funding, multi-annual funding, or privileged projects. Base funding is very good to plan, but may lead to crystallization and immobility. Projects is more demanding, more up to date, more following the new trends, but does not have long-term perspectives and may hinder larger actions. Just as an example of what we should look for, again, which organizational model is better, having services organization for the infrastructure, where the infrastructure basically sitting, waiting for teams to come and buy or ask for services, or should it promote and be partner in directly partner in projects? Because the organization is different for both situations. And then really critical aspect, that is how to get these infrastructures attractive for good resources. Human resources for these organizations is not easy. I'm talking by my experience. I have researchers in my research institute that prefer to get a position at university with a lower salary, but maybe with different perspectives, than staying just on the research side. An aspect that we've seen in the presentation by Ines Robin repeatedly mentioned is how to deal with data management. Do we want to have internal repositories for our data sets? Are we planning shared repositories among different research infrastructures, but maybe under the same university? Or should we use external services? How is the deployment of data management plans? Is it something that is taken seriously and operational, or is it just another bureaucratic task in the application? Whether there are specificities in health research infrastructures. I'm not from the area, so I can't answer this one. And finally, and maybe one of the most relevant for this discussion today, which are the main barriers to networking, to resource sharing, to interoperability within the EUGLOHRIA Excellent Core Facilities Network, and how to overcome these barriers. Maybe I follow the same order. Oh, I think we can go with the same order. So, Professor Konya.
Thank you. I'm just thinking, but I cannot really say too much different things what I said earlier. That really depends on the infrastructure. I mean, that your questions are really good questions, but absolutely different from one to another. I mean, let's check, for example, an infrastructure which is used for patients in medicine. You know, it's most of the time it's working 24/7. It's always working. Even if there is no patient, you have to use it. You have to put it into the. It's there. You are using air conditioning and so on and so on. I mean, you always need some basic funding to make it work. On the other side of the list, let's say, there can be instruments. What is working when you have an experiment, and if you don't have an experiment for 2 months, then you don't have to switch it on. And the handling is absolutely different from one to another. If you have 24/7 instruments, you always need a kind of core funding wherever it is coming. It can come from the university, or it can come from the project. But it must come, otherwise, if you switch it off once, then you cannot switch it on again, and you have to call the service to switch it on. And that's why it's very, very different. And you have to see it, as Professor Pereira said, one by one. as a multi-level, or how she called it, this kind of things. I mean that I was also surprised when we started to collect the ECFs. Oh, just one thing what I wanted to mention. I mean, the ECF and the infrastructure, I think it's two different words and absolutely different from each other. The infrastructure is the hardware. The ECF is the hardware plus the knowledge what is behind. And these two are absolutely different things. If you are just talking about infrastructure, you can just buy it and you can just switch it on and it's working. The ECF, I mean, the core facilities is the infrastructure plus the knowledge what is in the heads of the researcher or teachers or professors or students or whatever. And you cannot just buy it. You have to start it and you have to develop it for years. I mean, this is the reason why the two things are different and you have to handle it differently. The infrastructure and the ECF itself. We collected the ECFs when there is the infrastructure and the knowledge behind. And if you are going there, there is somebody who knows how to measure what you are measuring and how to interpret what you are measuring. And then you have the data, and most of the time they know how to handle the data as well. I mean that nowadays we have like this big data analysis. I mean that you have megabytes, gigabytes of data, and you have to collect somewhere. This is also not a simple question. I mean that we have sometimes if you have a contract with a huge company, then actually the data management is already set it in the contract, because they tell you how can you handle the data and where can you handle the data. I mean that you cannot just put a huge company's data to a private server somewhere. I mean you have to store it either at the data server of the company or at the data server of the university. So it depends also on the data what you have. At the University of Szeged, we are planning, or actually we are making our own data server, and we are collecting our data at the University of Szeged, and we try to press our colleagues to store the data at the University of Szeged. It's not easy because there are easier solutions just to store it somewhere outside. It's not safe. Sometimes a contract does not really allow it, but it's easier. I can understand that it's easier, but normally it should not happen. The other question is that what the
barriers to the SCF.
Oh, the barrier.
No barriers for you.
We always have barriers. There are always barriers if you want to change an older system. I mean that we, as I mentioned, the last couple of years, we wanted to change the thinking of our professors. I mean, they just tried to collect the instruments and the knowledge, and the first step was to make some virtual ECF. I mean that when we collect the instruments and said that we have 5, let's say, electron microscope here, there, but at least we just put these 5 into a virtual ECF and said that we have this knowledge, we have these instruments. So if an industrial partner is coming, or a private partner coming, or some researchers are coming from other universities, you can use these 5 because this is good for this one is good for that one. And we try to change these virtual ECFs now really physical ECFs when the instruments are in one place, and the large ones we try to put under university handling. As I mentioned, I do believe that the large infrastructures and the expensive ones should be handled by the university or by a huge institution, and not just one department or one person actually, because then everybody can use it, and you somehow it's safe. I mean that the whole work with this kind of instrumentation is safe, because every time you are coming, it's working the same way. If you're coming next week, it will be working, and then you don't have to wait 2 months to work on the same instruments. It is very important, I think. So I mean that as far as I try to answer your questions. If I have something else, then I will react. Okay?
Yes, sure. And Paul, what's your view on the future?
Yeah, future is bright. Well, I think there's a lot of things. There's happening things in many countries that in parallel. I think in Norway we have gone from a funding system which had a lot of base funding at universities, and this is now being decreased all the time, and more money is based on competition, and I think that's fair. But we need to think differently than when we're funding infrastructures. And I think what we talked about earlier with doing infrastructures more findable, accessible, interoperative, so that you can share infrastructures is very important. And I think also that the co-use of infrastructures is something that many of our infrastructures hasn't taken into account as a funding mechanism. So I think instead of having duplicates of the same infrastructures, or so instead having things that are different infrastructures that match each other. And I think one of the things that we work a lot on now is how to increase, of course, our ability to compete within research. So the quality of research is very important in order to get the funding for the research and the infrastructure that we have. We also see that there's a tremendous increase in data that's coming. We have several research vessels that collect data in the Arctic, and the amount of data that they collect now is enormous compared to just some years ago. So this is a challenge. It should both be taken care of safely, and it should be used good. And I think data is the big thing in the coming years. How can we use this better? How can we use open data? What kind of possibilities is in open data? We need to build a culture among our researchers in how to think about what possibilities that can open up by sharing your data. And obviously, it's a challenge that we need to, if you would like to have them findable, accessible, and interoperative. We need to have systems that are able to do this, but we need also people that can manage the data in a good way. And it was a survey in Norway some years ago, and that it was estimated that we need 1 curator per 10 researcher. And that's a big investment for universities. I think also with the data, we should not trust like private companies with our data. I'm not very, we don't need to have it at our university, but I think we should have systems that are not owned by Elsevier or other commercial agents, because then we lose ownership of our own data. So I think international collaboration is very important. And I think also AI, we don't understand yet what the consequences of AI will have for the data that comes out of our databases and so on. Yeah, a little bit all over, but I think also with collaborating on infrastructures and using data together, I think what Sonja, her point about interdisciplinarity is also very important, that you can bring different disciplines together using the same data, and maybe also combining data sets is an important thing. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, and to conclude this round, Sonja.
Yeah, so again, coming back to the questions about the funding portfolio, what is the best model? I would say it's an hybrid one, arising, of course, from base funding or multi-annual funding. Or at least in our reality in Portugal, I think that years will come and we will work still very linked to the funding that comes from the central government, I would say like this, for research, and that can be based on multi-annual, but I would agree that projects bring another dynamics. So when we are part of research projects, research and innovation projects, and we have funding for that allow us going beyond what we have planned 3 years back, I would say it like this. I think that this mix and this hybrid model would be the solution or the way to go forward. About being attractive to good researchers, I think that's a question for each research structure, either a research infrastructure or a research unit, or I don't know, people that we want to capture or be attractive to through, I don't know, large funding programs, or for instance, ERC grants, and I think that we have to be competitive, and being competitive either at a research infrastructure level or at university level in general has to do about being clear of what we want to do, what our perspective is, our vision, our mission, what are the infrastructures in general, either physical devices or tangible or intangible, with the knowledge behind those. I think that's a question of governance, a question of defining a little bit better what we can offer. And sometimes this has nothing to do with salaries, as Professor David was saying a few minutes ago. I don't know exactly how we can be attractive, but we can be attractive by showing that we have put something and some area in our agenda. And I think research infrastructures should be in the agenda and are in the agenda. And of course, to provide the best conditions possible and to pass on information on what do we have, what we can offer, and what can bring also, what is the added value for the institution. I know this is quite an abstract answer because I don't think there is a specific and only one answer to this, but we know that large projects or flagship initiatives tend to bring good researchers, whatever that means in the definition, but we are in a sense of excellence research performance, I would say like this. So I don't know what how to be attractive. Well, put it outside, give outreach to these research infrastructures, what has been doing, which collaborations, internal, but also with the external, with clients, for instance, companies, other universities, other types of stakeholders from the outside, outside the academia world. Maybe that is a good recognition as well for the work being done by the researchers that are part of these research infrastructures. And sometimes, again, recognition is not about paying more, it's about being able to choose some path and some flexibility and be in a position of having some research freedom, I would say it like this. And I think that research infrastructures can, of course, be a means to this. About data management, actually, there's something that is going on here in Portugal also through our national agency. There has been some changes and some studies from the national agency itself in the way it looks to open access, open science, and data management, also from the perspective of the funding agency and the perspective of the projects that are funded by that agency. So there has been discussion, and we know that our national agency is being part of a project that is pretty much dedicated to this aspect of data management, repositories, national and or institutional ones. So this is actually now in the loop of discussions. So we do have some repositories at the University of Porto. In the scope of projects, we are pretty much asked about how to deal with this in research aspects and research process. So I think that at national level and at the Porto level, we will be having some changes also linked to a change of vision and a change in regulations or rules from the funding agencies. And actually, we do have, of course, our autonomy as an institution, a higher education institution, but we are pretty much aligned or linked to our context. So our setting and our national setting is developing in a sense that we tend to follow. And of course, University of Porto positions in that dynamics, but is also looking and preparing the ground to take a position, I would say it like this, regarding the repositories and external services. About the health research infrastructures, I'm also not from that field, but for me it's quite fair and easy to think that an infrastructure in the field of social sciences and humanities, arts and humanities and health, it's completely different. So probably in the social sciences, we have more databases, not with patient data or something like that. So in principle, it's not so heavy to deal with this data management aspects as data protection, patient data, etc., etc. As for the barriers to networking within EUGLO, I would say, not sure if I would put it as barriers, because I think it was very clear today here that the first steps have been taken within EUGLO, and a very important one also for University of Porto. It allows us to map, in a sense, a lot of infrastructures. I would say that this first step is taken, and the next step would be internally at EUGLO and at EUGLO level to make it knowledgeable, meaning that it doesn't matter if we have a catalog or if it is in a web page, if our researchers don't know it is available. So we know that we have the list or the links as from the webpage from EUGLOHRIA to the list of infrastructures for the 5 partners. I would suggest actually to make it a little bit more of a catalog with a different dissemination mean, so that we could see as a network, as an alliance, the full information of each of the infrastructures. And yes, I agree totally with Eric when he said this is a living thing, right? Because some infrastructures close, change, upgrade. But I would say that one way that we have for people to be informed about these infrastructures, in this case, would be to have a clear information anywhere. And I would say that a kind of publication or something like that would be very much effective and more quick in a sense that it would be easier to send out possibly a list of all connecting infrastructures so that the researchers could know exactly what's going on. And this is my main barrier, I would say. It's the lack of awareness. For me, it's the lack of awareness of what we have done within EUGLOHRIA in terms of research infrastructure, but that goes beyond that. And that comes with my role as I've head of research project and projects office. And we have been working a lot in the last years to put together information numbers on research in all different dimensions. And this is one of those. And for sure, I'd take the message to take a little bit of more attention to the research infrastructures. So that would, I would say, that's the main barrier to networking. We cannot network if we don't know who's on the other side. So for me is who's who? Who's who? If I want to have a connection, if I want to do some research or other type of activity with someone from Paris-Saclay or from Lund or for Szeged, I would like to know exactly what's available, who's doing what. And I think that when it comes to research infrastructures, the work is done. People are identified. Maybe the next step is put it a little bit more clearer outside to everybody understand exactly which infrastructures are there. Yeah, to overcome, yeah, maybe, I don't know, some dissemination, outreach, joint outreach campaign to go further, of course, out what has been done, which is a major step, and it's a very important activity for the EUGLO. Thank you.
Yes, I agree that creating the catalog is very important, but I think that the project went a step farther, forcing the managers of the infrastructures to fill the template, forced them to think about aspects that were not previously explicit and well thought of. So I think that filling the template was a positive push towards better management of the infrastructure themselves, besides the dissemination aspect.
Self-awareness, right?
Yeah,
Self-awareness,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to risk to be a bit provocative. If we have an infrastructure that is somehow private to some group, some institution, maybe we think that to improve share of this infrastructure, to improve interoperability and so on, it's better to make that research infrastructure autonomous and separate from the users. I don't believe this is a good way to go. I think that the most effective and sustainable infrastructures are those that are connected very strongly and under the responsibility of research teams. Those that are separated from research teams in a certain period, I think they tend to be less active, less innovative, and become more static and fade out. Another aspect is that I think the connection to the education is essential for research infrastructures. At first sight, students, mainly from the first years, may seem an nuisance for researchers and technicians that are concerned with deadlines, answering to the projects and so on. But if they cut the link with the education component in the medium term, I think they will again lose attractivity for new researchers and lose also the contact with the new ideas, new things that happen. So I think that the capacity of receiving students that are finishing high school and looking for where to go in the higher education phase, or receiving the visits from students from other universities, other institutions, or the programs that are on our side. They require a certain discipline and a certain convincing of the technicians, but in the long term, I think they pay off. These two aspects for me are clear from the experience I've been amassing. But I don't know if you think the same or if you prefer other aspects. With respect to the data management, I have mixed feelings there. Because a properly managed data center requires specific knowledge and a layer of curators, of data managers that our data centers currently do not have. They must build it. These data centers must be within reach. They must not be far away. So I don't believe on national infrastructure or even international infrastructure for the day-to-day management of data. I believe that at the level of a large research institute or of a university, it's good granularity to install such a facility that will serve, and in this case, it's a set of services, it's the other model, every area, every research team. So this is my view, but I'd like you to contradict me if you think so. Paul, I don't know if you have any views. Yes?
Yes, I'm happy to contradict. Because I think it's important to have curators close, but I don't think that the repositories needs to be managed close. I think you can have national systems. The important thing is to have data on a certain form that it's able to find them and also to use them by others. And this you need people that can help you curate your data. So I think it's important to have this kind of services close, but I think the actual storage of data and so on is not that important. I mean, we have at university 4 large health surveys or big databases with health, and we have made this service center that is doing this exactly like you say. And I think that works fine, but from many other types of data that are very different and so on, I think we as a university are not able to create databases that are within each specific field or so on. So it's important that these databases can be found through search equipment and so on. And also the sensitive data, I think it's important that they also are findable, but they should not be open, of course. So yeah. That's my view.
Yes, I was not implying that the data structures for specific disciplines should be local. No, that's of course not my idea. I'm talking about the generic services for all the areas that are not discipline specific and that need to have curators accessible. I think this is the different aspect with respect to our current situation. We need curators that are able to dialogue with the research teams, maybe help them preparing their data management plans, and improve the quality of their applications to projects, for instance.
Yes, I agree with you about there is a national institute in Norway that has tried to do this at a central level in Norway, and I agree with you completely that these kind of curators needs to be much closer. You cannot do this at the national so I agree with you on that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And the AI problems that are being discussed in many different venues makes us recognize that the data facilities are no longer passive repositories, but they have responsibilities. They have ethical questions to be addressed, and so they need people. It's not possible to have just a bunch of hardware filled with data. That's also my perspective. Don't know if you want to add something more.
Yes, I was just thinking of clarifying something, because Professor Gabriel, you talked about the autonomy in your view, the autonomy and the infrastructures being close to the research units.
Yes.
I think I wasn't clear before, but when I talked about autonomous works also, or at the organizational level or the research unit, I was thinking about our ecosystem. And in our ecosystem, we do have research institutes that are autonomous, legally autonomous, but that within our research institute. So I was not talking about, for me, it's acceptable to think of a research infrastructure outside the research ecosystem. It should be autonomous in the sense of linked research institute. Okay, it was a specificity that I didn't bring to the table or didn't explain, but I was talking about our research ecosystem, and we do have these research institutes. This is one of those, actually, and many of the research infrastructures that fed the list of research infrastructures for EUGLOHRIA come from here. So, and this research institute is autonomous in that sense from University of Porto, not a faculty from us, but they are our ecosystem. So my point of view was in the sense of autonomy within our ecosystem and not leaving behind this connection for the University of Porto, okay? So not just suggesting that autonomy and having a research infrastructure wherever it should be. Okay, just this, it was a clarification because I realized that that it might not be clear, but I totally agree with you. And of course, the much proximity to research units who do the research itself, I would say it like this, it makes sense that these research infrastructures are connected, linked to these research teams, and of course, through the research members to education and students, etc. So I agree with that. So my multi-level was within our ecosystem. Thank you.
Yes, but then you need one thing that I think this project may do, and it's that if you have a facility that is managed by a team, the team will prioritize the use of that facility by their own members. And I think that this project should make an effort to establish terms of reference for sharing. Otherwise, the sharing part will be always the last one. So maybe you can also contribute on this aspect. In order to get the facility in the CNF, some terms of reference must be met.
Just to be clear, beyond the memorandum of understanding, do you mean?
I'm not detailing, but
well, maybe we can have
yes,
a conversation afterwards. I take due notes because I think that adds something to the post EUGLOHRIA. Right, and this collection of research infrastructures for the benefit of the whole alliance. So there is the memorandum of understanding, which has set guidelines and some norms for legal and financial aspects. So I understand that you are suggesting something else to be added up to the information.
One idea could be
to open up, right?
To be that a certain percentage, a certain amount of funding should be put aside to support visiting researchers. And you need to have such capacity in order to be advertised and to be part of the. It's of course just an idea.
I think this goes well with EUGLOHRIA 2.0, right? For the next stage and to have the research infrastructures with other dimensions working around it, yes. And with some funding for this.
I don't know if you have a concluding message that you'd like to give.
Thank you. I agree with all these things that we were discussing. Actually, when we collected the ECS from the universities, from the 5 partners, we asked already if there is any free time of these instruments. I mean, that this was the basic question. Otherwise, it's kind of useless to collect it. I mean, that if I say that I have an infrastructure, but you cannot come here, then this is not in the 700 something. So I mean, this was one very important question, if there is any free time to share this infrastructure. But otherwise, I agree with all these things what you discussed. Thank you.
Okay. Paul, any concluding comment?
Yeah, I've been thinking about maybe there's a contradiction in what we are saying also a bit, because we all say that we use infrastructure as a selling point to build, to attract talent and so on. And it's, as I said in the beginning, it's a way of structuring science in a way, that you have this infrastructure. And at the same time, we say that we need to collaborate more and to share. So in a way, we compete on having the ownership of them, but we're open to let other people use our infrastructure, but we would rather have it close to ourselves. There's a little bit of contradictions in what I'm saying, and I think also you also have been into this. Yeah.
Okay. And Sonia, just to close.
Well, being the last, I agree with you. There's a kind of a contradiction, but again, I'd like to see it as a complementary action, not necessarily as a contradiction. We have two ways to reply to, which is being competitive and do our own path, but also collaborate with other organizations is part of the path, and it's one of the activities of the research infrastructure. So from my side, from University of Porto, I would say I would be very interested also in knowing the research infrastructures for the new partners of the Alliance. I think that would be a good exercise for the future to understand and expand the database, let's say it like this, of research infrastructures of the project. And we are, of course, totally available to connect and to exchange on this research infrastructures theme. So thank you very much.
I did not ask for questions from the audience, but of course, if you have any comment or question, we are happy to take them. If not, I will just say thank you very much again to the participants, both present and also very far north in the Arctic. So goodbye, and I hope that you found this conversation interesting and useful.
I would really like to be with you. I remember the warm weather and the good food that you had 2 weeks ago in Lisbon, so I would like to be there, but maybe next time. So bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We'd just like to thank you all for being present and for watching this session today with us. And tomorrow we'll start at 9:30, where we'll present the studies from the pilot studies from the researchers. I'll present during the morning, so we'll see you soon in the morning tomorrow. Thank you very much.